The night Hannah Brooks went in to deliver her babies, her husband was not holding her hand. He was calculating how much her death was worth. The elevator doors opened to the private maternity floor at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan. Hannah was on a gurney, eyes half open, skin gray, one hand gripping her belly like she was holding 3 small lives inside with pure will. Her monitors were screaming. Her blood pressure was crashing. The nurse kept saying, "Stay with me, sweetheart. Stay with me." But Hannah could barely hear her. Everything sounded like it was underwater. Her husband, Lucas Meyer, did not even look scared. He looked annoyed. He adjusted the cuff of his expensive suit like he was about to walk into a boardroom on Park Avenue, not into an operating room where his wife might code on the table. His phone lit up with messages, and he kept typing. The blue glow from his iPhone was cold on his face. He wasn't texting family. He was texting his girlfriend. "How long?" he typed. Sabrina texted back, "Baby, I'm already in the VIP lounge. Bring me good news." Good news, meaning Hannah doesn't make it. That was the plan. Hannah knew it. That was the worst part. 3 hours earlier, when the first contraction hit so hard she almost dropped to the kitchen floor, she heard Lucas in the next room. He was on speakerphone. He forgot she could hear him. He said, very calm, very businesslike, "The policy pays out $5 million if she doesn't survive. After that, the kids are mine, and we're set. No more stress." $5 million. He was talking about his wife like she was an expired contract. He was talking about his own children like assets. Hannah had stood there in shock, one hand on the counter, one hand on her belly. Her heart had felt like it was tearing. And not just from the pregnancy, from betrayal that went down to the bone. Now that same heart was failing. The doctor said her condition was rare and dangerous. "Your heart is tired," she told her gently. "If we don't move fast, you and the babies are both at risk." Hannah had nodded. She knew the truth. She knew she might not wake up, but she had one last request. "Promise me," she whispered, dragging air into her lungs. Save my girls, even if I can't come back." The nurse squeezed her hand. Lucas didn't move. He was already walking away, already pushing open the door to the VIP family room, with Sabrina waiting inside in a fitted black dress, diamonds at her throat, pretending to be the new Mrs. Meyer. Sabrina looked up and smiled like a winner. She lifted her glass of champagne and said softly, almost laughing, "To new beginnings." Hannah heard that laugh through the door as they rolled her towards surgery. She closed her eyes. In that moment, Hannah Brooks understood something like ice. She was not dying from pregnancy. She was being erased, on purpose. And if this was her last hour on Earth, she was not leaving quietly, because someone else was already on their way to the hospital. Someone Lucas did not know existed. Someone who did not lose. And when he walked in, everything Lucas built on Hannah's blood would start to burn. 36 hours before the delivery, the apartment on West 64th Street looked peaceful. Too peaceful. The rain outside the window traced long lines down the glass, the sound soft and constant, almost like a heartbeat. Hannah Brooks was folding the last set of tiny onesies, all white with little clouds on them. She smiled faintly, talking to her belly. "We're almost there, my loves. Mommy just needs a little more time." Her back hurt, her ankles were swollen, but she was glowing in that quiet, tired way mothers do before birth. In the living room, Lucas was pacing with his laptop open, the screen full of red numbers and graphs. He looked like a man staring at his own downfall. "Lucas," Hannah said softly, "can you help me pack the hospital bag?" He didn't answer. He was too busy on a call. Through the speaker, a man's voice said, "If the investment doesn't close by Friday, you'll default, Lucas. You'll lose everything." Lucas rubbed his temple. "I'll find a way. I always do." Hannah had no idea that the way meant her life. After the call, he slammed his MacBook shut and turned to her. "You should rest. You're stressing me out." She blinked, confused. "I'm stressing you out?" "Yeah," he snapped. "You're not the only one under pressure, Hannah. Do you think money grows on trees?" He grabbed his jacket and stormed out. She stood there for a long moment, one hand on her stomach, whispering to the babies to stay calm. Then her phone buzzed. A calendar notification she didn't remember setting. Lunch at Soho House, 1:30 p.m. L+S. Her heart froze. Sabrina. She knew the name. She'd seen it on his phone before, saved under client. By 1, she was sitting in a parked Toyota outside Soho House, watching through the rain-smeared windshield. Lucas arrived first in his navy suit. Sabrina appeared minutes later, red coat, perfect hair, heels clicking like applause. She leaned in to kiss him on the cheek. Not quick, not friendly. Too close. Too long. Hannah's throat burned. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Inside, the waiter poured wine. Sabrina laughed, brushing Lucas's hand. "So when does it happen?" Lucas smiled tightly. "Tomorrow night, after the C-section, the policy will trigger immediately. And the kids? Neonatal care. Paid in full. Then they're mine." Sabrina's eyes sparkled. "Then we're finally free." Hannah covered her mouth, tears spilling. Her vision blurred. She started the car and drove away before they could see her. That night, she confronted him. The confrontation every betrayed woman dreams about, but never wants to live. She waited until he came home, loosened his tie, poured whiskey into his glass like he owned the world. "Who is Sabrina Vale?" she asked quietly. Lucas froze. "What? Don't play stupid. I saw you. I heard everything." He smirked, that cold, arrogant smile of a man who believes he's untouchable. "You shouldn't have followed me, Hannah. That's not healthy for you or the babies." "You planned it," she whispered. "You actually planned my death." Lucas shrugged, sipping his drink. "Don't be dramatic. You're sick, Hannah. You might not survive. I'm just being practical." He set his glass down with a click. "If anything happens, it's not my fault. It's just life. But at least the kids will be taken care of. And Sabrina, she'll make a great mother." Her legs nearly gave out. She clutched the counter to stay upright. He walked past her, the smell of whiskey and betrayal thick in the air. "Oh, and Hannah," he added, turning back at the door, "don't embarrass yourself at the hospital tomorrow. I've already arranged everything." The door slammed. The echo lingered. For the first time, Hannah wasn't scared of dying. She was scared of leaving her daughters in the hands of monsters. And in that fear, something inside her hardened, not hate, not anger, but a cold, sharp will to survive. Because if Lucas had made his plans, then so would she. And her plan would end with his name burned into ash. Morning light crept through the blinds, pale and cold. Hannah Brooks sat on the edge of her bed, both hands pressed against her chest. Her heartbeat was too fast, too loud, like a hammer inside her ribs. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lucas and Sabrina at that table, whispering about insurance money over red wine. By the time she reached Mount Sinai Hospital for her final checkup, she could barely stand. The nurse saw her face and ran for help. Dr. Evelyn Grant appeared almost instantly. She was in her 50s, with silver streaks in her dark hair and calm, intelligent eyes that didn't miss a single detail. She helped Hannah into a chair, then looked at the monitor. The numbers made her frown. "Your blood pressure is unstable," Evelyn said softly, "and your heart's under too much strain. Carrying triplets is hard enough, but with this condition, I just want them safe." Hannah interrupted, her voice thin but firm. Evelyn studied her for a long second. There was something in the young woman's face, courage mixed with quiet despair, that reminded her of someone she once knew. "I'm admitting you tonight," the doctor said. "No arguments. You need constant monitoring until delivery." Hannah nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't tell the doctor that she'd already packed her own bag, not because she expected care, but because she expected war. When Lucas arrived that evening, he looked annoyed again, not worried. He carried a folder in his hand, sleek, blue, stamped with the logo of DocuSign Health Authorization. "What's that?" Hannah asked. "Paperwork," he said. "Routine stuff, in case you're unconscious during surgery." He placed the tablet in front of her. The page was already open, her name typed neatly at the top, medical power of attorney, Lucas Meyer. Her hand trembled. "I never signed this." "You must have forgotten," he lied smoothly. "We did it online weeks ago." Evelyn entered the room at that exact moment. "Excuse me, Mr. Meyer, we need to run another scan." Lucas forced a smile. "Sure, doctor." Then he leaned close to Hannah, voice low and sharp. "Don't make this difficult. You're already making me look bad." When he left, Evelyn noticed the way Hannah's fingers dug into the bedsheet. "You're shaking," she said gently. "Is it pain?" Hannah hesitated, then whispered, "He forged my signature." Evelyn blinked. "On what?" "Medical documents. He wants control if something happens to me." The doctor's eyes darkened. "That's illegal and cruel." Hannah gave a bitter smile. "He doesn't see me as a person anymore, just a policy waiting to expire. Evelyn sat beside her, resting a hand on hers. Listen to me, Hannah. I've seen men like him before. Polished on the outside, rotten underneath. You're not alone, okay? Whatever happens, I'll be here. Hannah swallowed hard. Why are you helping me? Evelyn paused before answering. Because once, a long time ago, I couldn't help someone I cared about. She died before I could make it right. You remind me of her. Something flickered behind Evelyn's composed face, a memory too painful to speak. That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. The machines beside her hummed softly. Through the small hospital window, she could see the Manhattan skyline glowing like a sea of diamonds, beautiful, distant, untouchable. She reached for her phone and started recording a video. Her voice was shaky but clear. If I don't make it, she said, please show this to my daughters when they're old enough. Tell them I loved them before I even saw their faces. Tell them I fought to be their mother until the very end. She looked into the camera one last time. I'm not giving up, not yet. Then she pressed save. The file uploaded automatically to a cloud drive, one Lucas could never access. Outside her door, Evelyn stood in the corridor, speaking quietly to someone on the phone. She doesn't know it yet, she said, but I think I found her father. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fear. Hannah Brooks lay in her private room, wires running from her arms to machines that beeped like distant alarms. Outside the window, the Manhattan skyline flickered against the storm clouds, tall, glittering, and indifferent. It was the night before her scheduled C-section. Her heart monitor kept a slow, irregular rhythm. She tried to pray, but the words wouldn't come. On the side table sat a small notebook. She opened it and wrote letters to each of her unborn daughters. To Grace, the oldest, the calm one. Never let anyone silence you. To Lily, the curious one. Trust your heart, even when the world doesn't. To Hope, the fighter. You already saved me more than once. She folded the notes and slipped them into the pocket of the tiny baby bag she'd packed herself. She had triple-checked every item. Diapers, onesies, even a small plush bear she bought from the hospital gift shop. Her body was failing, but her mind was organized, sharp. Mothers always are when danger is close. The door opened. Lucas walked in, smelling of cologne and whiskey. He had that same detached look, like a man visiting a business client, not his wife. Why are you here? Hannah asked softly. To make sure you sign the discharge forms, he replied, placing papers on her tray table. Hospital protocol. And don't worry, Sabrina already talked to the anesthesiologist. Hannah froze. Sabrina? He shrugged. She's helping me manage things. You should thank her. She's been handling the details you can't. The words hit like a knife. You're letting your mistress handle my surgery? Lucas sighed, looking bored. Don't start, Hannah. I'm doing what's best for everyone. You're emotional. You don't think clearly right now. I'm dying, she whispered. Exactly. He said it so casually that her chest constricted in disbelief. For a second, she thought he might actually kill her right there, with his coldness, his indifference. Then as he turned to leave, she saw his phone light up with a message. Sabrina, everything's ready for tomorrow. I can't wait to post our photo at the plaza. The words burned into her mind. As soon as he left, she grabbed her own phone and started the recording app. She narrated everything, the fake medical authorization, the insurance policy, the mistress's involvement. Her voice trembled but didn't break. She emailed the file to Dr. Evelyn with the subject line, "If I don't make it." Minutes later, Evelyn appeared in the doorway, her eyes full of quiet rage. I listened to it, she said softly. You were right. He forged everything. But don't worry. I've made a call. Someone needs to know what's happening. Who? Hannah whispered. My father, Evelyn replied. He's very good at finding people who think they can bury the truth. Before Hannah could ask more, a sudden wave of pain ripped through her chest. The monitor screamed. Evelyn shouted for help, and within seconds, the room flooded with nurses. Her vision blurred. Voices became echoes. She felt cold all over. Stay with me, Hannah. Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos. Somewhere in the haze, Hannah thought she heard thunder. Or maybe it was just the storm outside slamming against the window. She was being wheeled toward the OR when she caught a glimpse of Lucas standing at the nurse's station, phone in hand, whispering to Sabrina. He didn't even look at his wife being rushed past him. As they pushed her through the double doors, Hannah managed one last whisper to the doctor at her side. If I don't come back. Evelyn leaned close. You will. I promise. But Hannah's final thought before the anesthesia took her under wasn't about dying. It was about surviving long enough to destroy the man who turned her love into a ledger. Because even if she didn't make it, the truth she'd recorded tonight would. The world was sound and light and panic. The clock on the wall read 3:12 a.m. when the alarms began to scream. Inside Operating Room 4 of Mount Sinai, Hannah Brooks was surrounded by a blur of blue gloves and surgical masks. Her heart monitor spiked, then dipped violently. Pressure dropping fast, a nurse shouted, "Get me another unit of blood." Dr. Evelyn Grant barked, her voice controlled but urgent. Hannah's vision was already dimming. The white lights above her looked like stars fading out one by one. She felt her body separating from itself, heavy and light at once, the way a soul must feel before it leaves. "Please," she whispered, "my babies." "Stay with us, Hannah," Evelyn said, gripping her hand. A nurse wiped sweat from the doctor's forehead. The atmosphere in the OR was electric, tense. The C-section was half done. 2 of the babies had been delivered, their cries soft and weak. The third still hadn't come out. "Her pulse is erratic," the anesthesiologist said. Evelyn made a decision that would define her life. "Call the husband," she said coldly. "He's the medical proxy on record." A nurse sprinted out to the hallway. Lucas Meyer was standing there, phone in hand, suit jacket perfectly pressed, as if he were at a business meeting. Sabrina sat beside him in the VIP waiting area, scrolling through her phone, sipping coffee from a paper Starbucks cup. When the nurse approached, breathless, Lucas looked irritated. "What? Dr. Grant needs your permission," the nurse panted. "Your wife's losing blood fast. We might have to make a choice." "Save the babies," he interrupted instantly. No hesitation, no emotion. Sabrina smiled faintly, crossing one leg over the other. "It's the logical thing to do," she whispered. The nurse froze, shocked at their calmness. "Sir, you understand." "I said save the babies," Lucas repeated, already looking back at his phone. Back inside, Evelyn clenched her jaw. She knew what that meant. She knew the law, but she also knew what kind of man Lucas was. "We're not letting her die," she muttered. Her assistant hesitated. "Doctor, his consent." "I don't care. I'll take responsibility." The third baby finally emerged, tiny and still, until the nurse rubbed her back and a weak cry filled the room. The sound made Evelyn's throat tighten. "She did it," the nurse whispered, but then the heart monitor flatlined. "Code red," someone screamed. Evelyn's hands moved fast, chest compressions, adrenaline shot, defibrillator pads pressed against Hannah's chest. The smell of burned skin mixed with antiseptic. "Come on, Hannah, breathe." For one endless moment, nothing happened. Then a faint blip appeared on the monitor. Then another. Then a rhythm. "She's back." The room exhaled. Evelyn sagged against the table, whispering, "Welcome back, sweetheart." She looked at the 3 babies, all alive, all fragile, and thought, "You just beat death 3 times. When Hannah was wheeled into recovery, pale and unconscious, Evelyn stepped into the hallway. Lucas was there, still scrolling, still cold. "So?" he asked. "She's alive," Evelyn said flatly. "And so are the babies." His jaw tightened. "All of them?" "All 3, she confirmed. He looked genuinely disappointed before covering it with a smile. "Well, miracles happen." Sabrina laughed softly beside him. "Guess she didn't get the memo." Evelyn's gaze hardened. "If I were you, Miss Vale, I'd watch my mouth. Hospitals have cameras. They record more than you think." Sabrina rolled her eyes. "Please. No one cares." Evelyn said nothing more. She just walked away, but her mind was already racing. She'd seen enough. The forged papers, the callous words, the lies. Tonight, she'd call her father again. He had resources Lucas Meyer couldn't even imagine. In room 407, Hannah stirred weakly, her hand twitching. The monitor beeped steady, alive. Her lips moved, barely audible. Grace, Lily, hope. The storm outside crashed against the window, but she was still here, alive, barely. And somewhere in the building, Justice had just started breathing too. Morning came gray and heavy, like the sky itself didn't dare to shine. The storm had passed, but Mount Sinai still smelled of rain and sterilized air. In room 407, Hannah Brooks floated between sleep and pain. Her skin was pale, her lips cracked, her heartbeat fragile on the monitor. A slow, uneven rhythm that whispered, "You made it, but barely." When she opened her eyes, everything was blurred. Shapes, shadows, and faint beeping. Then she heard a sound that cut straight through the haze. Laughter. It was light, feminine, and cruel. She turned her head slightly, pain shooting through her chest. Standing by the window, perfectly framed by the morning light, was Sabrina Vale. She was dressed like she'd walked out of a fashion magazine. Beige trench coat, hair sleek, a Cartier bracelet flashing gold when she moved. She held her phone up, recording herself with a smile. "Day 2 at Mount Sinai," Sabrina said into the camera. "The babies are fine. The situation is complicated." She smirked. "But love always finds a way." Click. The recording ended. She turned to Hannah. "Well," she said softly, "you're tougher than I thought. We really thought you'd be gone by now." Hannah's voice came out hoarse. "Why are you here?" "Lucas needed support," Sabrina said sweetly. "He's exhausted, and honestly, someone had to make decisions for the babies. You've been unavailable." Hannah tried to sit up, but pain tore through her stitches. She gasped, clutching her side. Sabrina didn't move to help. "You shouldn't strain yourself," Sabrina continued, strolling toward the bed. "You've done enough damage already. Poor Lucas has been so stressed, taking care of Triplets, managing his company, dealing with the press. Everyone thinks you died, by the way. He told them you didn't make it." Hannah froze. "He told them I'm dead?" Sabrina smiled wider. "Relax. It's temporary. It makes things simpler for now. The media loves a tragic hero. Widowed father, 3 newborns, beautiful new partner who saved him from despair." Her laughter filled the room again, soft but venomous. Hannah's hand gripped the blanket. "You think you've won," she whispered. Sabrina tilted her head. "Sweetheart, I already have. You're weak, broke, and medically unstable. The world thinks you're gone. By the time you crawl out of this bed, your name will be erased. Even the hospital files list you as deceased. Isn't that poetic?" The door opened then, and Dr. Evelyn Grant walked in. Her eyes darted between the 2 women. "What's going on here?" "Just a friendly visit," Sabrina said smoothly, flashing a smile. "Lucas asked me to check on her." Evelyn's tone turned icy. "This is a recovery room, not a social club. You're not family. You need to leave." Sabrina lifted her hands in mock surrender. "Fine, but you should thank me, doctor. Without Lucas, this hospital wouldn't have been paid yet." As she walked out, she leaned close to Hannah's ear and whispered, "Enjoy your stay, ghost girl." When the door shut, Evelyn turned to her patient. "Are you all right?" Hannah couldn't speak. Her eyes filled, not from pain, but humiliation. She was alive, yet the world had buried her already. Evelyn sat beside her, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. "Listen to me. Don't give her the satisfaction of breaking you. You're still here, and that means you still have power." Hannah swallowed hard. "They're going to take my babies." Evelyn's voice hardened. "Not if I can help it." She reached into her coat pocket and placed something on the nightstand. "The USB drive." "What's that?" Hannah asked. "Proof," Evelyn said. "Of everything. His forged signatures, her messages, and a recording from last night's hallway camera. You're not as invisible as they think." Hannah looked at the small device like it was a weapon forged from hope. Outside the window, the clouds broke, letting in a sliver of pale sunlight. It fell across her face, and for the first time since the surgery, Hannah smiled. Weak, but real. Because somewhere deep inside her, the ghost had decided to rise. Night fell again over Manhattan, and the city hummed far below Mount Sinai Hospital like a restless heart that never stopped beating. In room 407, Hannah Brooks stirred in her bed for the first time in hours. The sedatives were fading. Her body still hurt, her head felt foggy, but her mind was waking up sharper than ever. The door was slightly open. She could hear faint voices from the hallway. Nurses changing shifts, the squeak of carts, the soft beeping of other monitors. But underneath all that, another voice, low, masculine, familiar, carried through the crack. "Lucas." "I don't care what the paperwork says," he was whispering harshly. "She's in no shape to make decisions. Just release the babies to me. I'm their father." A nurse's voice responded firmly. "Sir, hospital policy requires the mother's written consent. She's still alive. Until that changes, no one leaves the neonatal unit." "Then maybe it needs to change," Lucas muttered. Something cold slid through Hannah's veins. She wasn't just fighting to heal, she was fighting to exist. She turned her head toward the nightstand. There sat the USB drive Dr. Evelyn had left. Tiny, ordinary, yet it could destroy everything Lucas had built. The problem was, she didn't even have her phone. Lucas had taken it for security reasons. Hannah closed her eyes, forcing herself to think. She couldn't move much, but she could still act. Moments later, the door creaked open. Evelyn stepped inside, carrying a clipboard. "How are we feeling tonight?" she asked, voice soft but deliberate. "Alive," Hannah whispered. "Barely." Evelyn checked her vitals, nodding. Then, lowering her voice, she said, "I've contacted someone. A man who needs to know about you." Hannah frowned weakly. "Who?" Evelyn hesitated, then said, "My father. His name is Thomas Grant." The name didn't register at first, just a sound, but Evelyn's tone carried weight. "He's powerful, Hannah. I believe he's your biological father." Hannah blinked in disbelief. "What? That's impossible. My father died when I was 5. "Your mother believed that," Evelyn said softly. "But she was wrong." Before Hannah could respond, footsteps approached, heavy, impatient. "Lucas." Evelyn straightened instantly, professional mask sliding back into place. Lucas walked in, wearing his usual mask of calm control. He looked at Hannah the way a man might look at a bad investment, one he wished he could erase. "How are we feeling, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice dripping with fake concern. Hannah said nothing. Evelyn handed him a form. "The hospital is still processing your authorization. There's a delay." Lucas frowned. "A delay? My wife's incapable of." "She's my patient," Evelyn cut in firmly, "and she's capable enough to decide who can visit, which means you'll leave now." His expression hardened. "You're overstepping, doctor." "No," she said evenly. "You are." For a moment, tension filled the air, sharp as glass. Then Lucas forced a smile and stepped back. "Fine, I'll be back tomorrow. Make sure she's comfortable." When the door shut, Evelyn turned back to Hannah. "He's cracking," she said, "but we need time. My father's flying in tomorrow night. He'll make sure you're protected." Hannah's heart thudded faster, fear and faint hope mixing like fire and ice. "Protected from what?" Evelyn's eyes met hers. "From the storm that man's about to unleash." That night, while the city glittered beyond the window, Hannah lay awake, replaying every betrayal, every lie. Her hand brushed the USB drive again, her secret weapon. She thought of her daughters in the NICU, tiny and perfect. She thought of the monster plotting to take them. And then, somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, "No more fear." Hannah Brooks wasn't going to wait to be saved anymore. By dawn, she'd be ready to fight for her life, even if it meant starting a war. By Friday morning, Mount Sinai buzzed with whispers. Nurses glanced at each other with uneasy eyes. Something strange was happening. Official paperwork had arrived declaring Hannah Brooks deceased. Dr. Evelyn Grant found the file sitting on her desk, stamped and signed with a forged signature. Time of death, 3:16 a.m., cardiac failure. It even carried her own initials, copied, not written. Evelyn's stomach twisted. She looked at the timestamp. The report had been filed 2 hours after Hannah's heartbeat stabilized. Lucas Meyer had moved faster than she expected. She stormed out of her office and down the corridor, heart pounding. Hannah's room was empty, bed stripped, machines gone. For a terrifying second, she thought Lucas had taken her. Then a voice behind her said quietly, "Dr. Grant?" It was the head nurse. "The patient's been transferred to a secure recovery suite on order from you." Evelyn exhaled slowly. "Good. Don't tell anyone where." Meanwhile, across town, the grieving husband was preparing for a spectacle. At a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, glass walls reflected the morning light over Manhattan's skyline. A floral arrangement surrounded a giant framed photo of Hannah, smiling, pregnant, glowing. The plaque beneath read, "In loving memory of Hannah Brooks Meyer, devoted wife and mother." Lucas stood in a tailored black suit, his expression carefully composed. Cameras flashed. A small crowd of investors, journalists, and friends filled the room. Next to him stood Sabrina Vale, dressed in a fitted black dress, eyes glistening with fake tears. She clung to Lucas's arm and whispered for the cameras. She was too pure for this world. Someone handed Lucas a microphone. He sighed deeply, eyes shining just enough for effect. "My wife was my compass," he began solemnly. "She gave me strength, even in her final moments. I promised her our children would grow up loved, surrounded by success, and never know struggle." He paused for dramatic effect, lowering his head. "And I'll honor that promise." The audience applauded politely. A journalist asked, "Mr. Meyer, what will happen to your company now?" Lucas smiled faintly. "Hannah believed in my vision. I'll keep building it for her and for our daughters." Behind him, Sabrina dabbed at her eyes, then leaned close to the PR photographer. Make sure you capture my hand on his shoulder, she whispered. Everything was going exactly as planned. Back at Mount Sinai, in the quiet of an unmarked recovery suite, Hannah lay awake under dim lights. The air was thick with disinfectant and secrets. Evelyn sat beside her, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, she's alive, Evelyn said in a low tone, but you'll need to move quickly. They've declared her dead publicly. On the other end, a deep, older voice replied, Send me proof. I'm already on a plane. Evelyn hung up and turned to Hannah. That was Thomas Grant, she said. He's landing tonight. Hannah blinked weakly. The man you think is my father? Evelyn nodded. He has more influence in this city than any of them, and he's furious. Hannah stared at the ceiling, processing everything, the fake funeral, the stolen identity, the man who might be her blood. Her body still ached, but her mind burned. So Lucas thinks I'm dead, she murmured. For now, Evelyn said. Let him celebrate. Hannah smiled faintly, bitterly. Then let's make sure it's the last party he ever enjoys. That evening, Lucas raised his champagne glass beside Sabrina, the Manhattan skyline glowing behind them. To new beginnings, he said smoothly. The cameras clicked, the toast shimmered, but across town in a locked hospital room, a woman once written off as dead opened her eyes wide and whispered, 2 endings. Because tomorrow her ghost would rise, and it would come for blood, money, and truth. Saturday night shimmered over Manhattan, the skyline glowing like a crown of glass and fire. The annual Investors for Humanity Gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, where billionaires in tailored tuxedos sipped champagne and whispered about mergers. Cameras flashed like lightning across velvet carpets. In the center of it all stood Lucas Meyer, dressed in black Armani, smiling for every camera. He looked like grief sculpted to perfection, a handsome widower, tragic yet strong. On his arm, Sabrina Val glowed in a diamond necklace, the picture of devotion. Tonight, Lucas said to the reporters, we honor Hannah Brooks, the woman who inspired this foundation. He gestured toward a giant portrait of Hannah displayed on the stage, her smiling face now a symbol he used to sell sincerity. Her legacy lives on and every life will help. Applause, cameras, sympathy, exactly as he planned. But something in the air shifted. A quiet ripple, like electricity before a storm. A photographer at the back of the ballroom suddenly froze, staring toward the entrance. The massive golden doors of the plaza opened slowly. For a moment, no one breathed. Then she walked in. Hannah Brooks, alive. The room gasped in unison. A few glasses slipped from trembling hands and shattered on marble floors. She wore a simple white dress that brushed her ankles, no jewelry, no makeup except a soft tint on her lips. The hospital pallor was gone. In its place, a quiet fire glowed in her eyes. Every step she took echoed like a verdict. Impossible, Sabrina whispered, color draining from her face. She's supposed to be dead, Lucas finished, his voice cracking. His smile froze, the mask slipping. All the cameras turned toward Hannah, flashing wildly now. Confusion, disbelief, awe. She stopped halfway across the ballroom. The chandeliers above cast a halo around her, making her look almost unreal. Then, from behind her, a man stepped forward, tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a dark suit. His presence silenced the crowd completely. Thomas Grant, the billionaire. The ghost from Manhattan's oldest financial dynasty. He placed a hand on Hannah's shoulder and faced the audience. His voice carried like a blade. Good evening. I'm here to correct a mistake. Murmurs rippled. Reporters leaned forward. Lucas swallowed hard. Mr. Grant, I didn't know you were coming. I didn't know my daughter was alive, Thomas said evenly, until 3 days ago. The ballroom fell dead silent. Cameras stopped clicking. Even the background music cut off. Your daughter? Someone gasped. Thomas nodded. Hannah Brooks, my child, the woman your beloved philanthropist husband tried to erase. Lucas's face turned the color of chalk. This is absurd. There's no proof. Thomas lifted a folder. DNA results. Signed by my lab in California. Verified by Mount Sinai Hospital. Would you like me to read them aloud? Sabrina clutched Lucas's arm. Do something, she hissed. Lucas tried to speak, but his voice trembled. This is insane. You don't know what she's done. She gave birth to your children while you forged her death certificate, Thomas interrupted, stepping closer. His tone was calm, almost gentle, but the kind of gentleness that came before destruction. And now, he said, you'll answer for every word, every lie, every drop of her blood. Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. Reporters scrambled to record every second. Sabrina backed away, whispering to a security guard, "Stop them. Shut the cameras off." But Thomas smiled coldly. "No, let them roll. The world deserves to see this truth." Hannah stood beside him, eyes steady, her breathing even. For the first time, she wasn't the patient, the victim, or the wife. She was something entirely different, reborn. The lights flickered once, then the sound of applause began. Slow, deliberate, unstoppable. People rose to their feet, clapping not for wealth or status, but for the woman who refused to die. Lucas Meyer stood frozen under the golden chandelier, trapped in his own performance, and the show was finally over. The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was silent, so silent that even the chandeliers seemed to tremble. Every camera was pointed at Hannah Brooks and the man beside her, Thomas Grant, the billionaire who had just claimed her as his daughter. Lucas Meyer stood center stage, his face pale and slick with sweat. Sabrina Vale clutched his arm, nails digging into his sleeve. She could feel his pulse racing. The mask of control he'd worn for years was cracking. Thomas turned to the crowd, his voice deep and measured, carrying through the marble hall. 25 years ago, I lost a child in a fire. At least that's what I was told. Tonight, I stand before you to tell the truth. She didn't die. She was taken from me, hidden, lied to, and her name is Hannah Brooks. Murmurs rippled across the audience. Cameras flashed wildly. The press pushed forward. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Grant, are you confirming she's your biological daughter?" Thomas nodded once. "I have the DNA report right here." He pulled a folded paper from his inner pocket and held it up. Verified by a federal lab and Mount Sinai Hospital. Another gasp spread through the room. Lucas stepped forward, voice trembling. This is ridiculous. She's manipulating you. She's not your daughter. She's a liar, a con artist. Enough." Thomas's voice cut through the noise like thunder. "I've spent a lifetime recognizing liars. I built empires on knowing which men can be trusted. And you, Mr. Meyer, reek of deceit." The room froze. Sabrina's hand slipped from Lucas's arm. She whispered, "Lucas, say something." Lucas tried to laugh, the sound brittle. "You think this changes anything? She's my wife, and I have legal custody of our children." "Not anymore," Thomas said, stepping forward. "Because the moment you filed her death certificate, you forfeited every right you ever had." The crowd gasped again, this time louder, like a wave. Hannah stood beside her father, calm but trembling inside. She could feel her heartbeat in her fingertips. This was the moment she had dreamed of and feared at once. The world was watching. Thomas glanced at her gently, his eyes softening. "You don't have to speak," he whispered, but Hannah did. She took a step forward, her voice clear but shaking. "You forged my death, Lucas. You and her," she said, pointing at Sabrina. "You told the world I was gone so you could steal money, my name and my children. But I'm still here, and I remember everything." Lucas shook his head violently. "You can't prove anything." Hannah held up her hand. Evelyn's USB drive glinted between her fingers. "Actually, I can." Thomas turned to one of his security guards. "Play it." The giant LED screen behind the stage flickered to life. A grainy hospital hallway appeared, the security footage from Mount Sinai. The crowd watched as Lucas's voice echoed from the speakers. "Save the babies. Let her go. The policy pays out $5 million. And then Sabrina's laugh followed. "Finally, we can start our life." The room erupted in gasps, shouts, disbelief. Some guests even stood, clutching their mouths. Lucas lunged toward the screen, yelling, "Turn it off! That's fake!" But two security guards restrained him instantly. Thomas looked at him with quiet disgust. "I built my fortune cleaning the rot out of men like you. Tonight, I do it again, for my daughter." Sabrina backed away, her heels clicking against the marble. "Lucas, do something," she cried. Lucas struggled, eyes wild. "You don't understand. It was business. She was dying anyway." Thomas's tone was ice. "No, Mr. Meyer, it was murder." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "And you almost got away with it." The cameras flashed again. This time, the story had changed. The tragic widow had returned, the monster unmasked, and a billionaire's confession turned into justice. Lucas Meyer stood frozen, cornered under the lights he once loved. His empire, his lies, his entire life, collapsing, one flashbulb at a time. And beside him, Hannah Brooks, the woman he tried to erase, was finally being seen. The ballroom was chaos. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks. Reporters shouted questions over each other. Lucas Meyer stood frozen, surrounded by noise, yet completely alone. On the massive LED screen behind him, the grainy hospital footage replayed in an endless loop, his own voice cold and clear. "Save the babies. Let her go. The policy pays out $5 million. Every word now echoed like a death sentence. Sabrina Vale's flawless face had drained of color. She stood paralyzed beside him, her manicured fingers twitching as whispers of murder rippled through the room. The crowd that once admired them now looked at them with disgust. Manhattan's elite, watching the scandal of the decade unfold in real time. Thomas Grant's security team flanked the stage, keeping reporters at bay. Beside him, Hannah Brooks stared at the screen, pale but unshaken. The woman on that video table, dying, betrayed, forgotten, was no longer her. That Hannah had been buried with the forged death certificate. The one standing now was reborn. Thomas took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard proof of what this man did to my daughter. Tonight, justice begins." Lucas tried to steady himself. "That recording, it's taken out of context. You don't understand." "Context?" Thomas's voice was thunder. "You told the doctor to let your wife die. You celebrated her funeral while she fought for her life, and you dared to call that love?" Gasps filled the ballroom. Cameras zoomed in, catching every twitch of Lucas's face, every flicker of panic. Sabrina finally found her voice. "This is slander. You'll all regret this." Thomas's lawyer stepped forward, his tone calm, rehearsed, and lethal. "Actually, Miss Vale, it's evidence, and it's already been transferred to the NYPD." The blood drained from her face. "The police?" "Yes," the lawyer said. "A warrant has been issued for both of you. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit manslaughter, and obstruction of justice." The words hit like gunshots. The crowd erupted again. Lucas turned to Hannah, his voice cracking. "You're doing this to me? After everything I gave you?" Hannah met his eyes. "You didn't give me life, Lucas. You tried to take it, and now you'll answer for that." Sabrina grabbed Lucas's arm, trembling. "We can leave. We can still fix this." But before they could move, two NYPD officers in plain clothes stepped forward, flashing badges. "Lucas Meyer and Sabrina Vale," one said. "You're under arrest." Lucas's composure shattered. Wait, you can't. My lawyer." His words drowned beneath the click of handcuffs. Sabrina whimpered, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "This isn't happening. It can't be happening." Thomas stood motionless as the officers led them through the silent crowd. Every camera followed their walk of shame toward the exit. Lucas tried to lift his chin, but his eyes darted to Hannah. Pleading, desperate, broken. She didn't flinch. When the doors closed behind them, a hush fell over the ballroom. Reporters whispered. Guests exchanged stunned looks. Somewhere in the back, someone began clapping. Soft, slow, deliberate. Then another joined, and another, until the applause rolled across the room like thunder. Hannah exhaled, trembling, as tears filled her eyes. Thomas put an arm around her shoulders. "It's over," he said gently. But she shook her head. "No, Dad, it's not over yet. The world still thinks I'm dead." Thomas gave a faint smile. "Then tomorrow we'll remind them how alive you are." Cameras turned again as Hannah stepped forward, facing the press directly. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I was betrayed, buried, and forgotten. But I'm still here, and I'm not afraid anymore." Every flash, every click, captured her rebirth. Outside the plaza, police cars lit up Fifth Avenue. Inside, under the golden chandelier, Hannah Brooks, the woman they'd tried to erase, stood radiant, defiant, alive. And the ghosts of her past were finally being led away in chains. Outside the Plaza Hotel, flashing red and blue lights washed across the marble facade like blood and ice. Crowds gathered behind yellow tape as Lucas Meyer and Sabrina Vale were escorted down the grand steps in handcuffs. Reporters shouted questions, cameras clicked in a frenzy, and the once charmed faces of Manhattan's it couple were now illuminated by police floodlights. "Mr. Meyer, do you have anything to say?" Lucas kept his head down. His custom Armani jacket hung crooked, his cufflinks missing, stripped of the armor he once wore so proudly. "Is it true you forged your wife's death certificate?" someone yelled. Sabrina flinched. We didn't mean." "Miss Vale, did you profit from the insurance payout?" another reporter called out. Her voice cracked. "You don't understand." But the world understood perfectly. The live stream was trending across social media in minutes. The Meyer scandal. Billionaire's widow alive. Husband arrested. Inside the plaza, the ballroom had emptied into whispers and shock. The wealthy guests who once courted Lucas's friendship now avoided even saying his name. The PR team from his company deleted every post about him within the hour. Investors began calling lawyers. Back upstairs, Hannah Brooks sat in a quiet side lounge with her father, Thomas Grant, and Dr. Evelyn Grant. The chaos of the night still echoed faintly from the streets below. Thomas poured her a glass of water and handed it to her carefully, as if she might break. "You did what most people couldn't, Hannah," he said softly. "You faced the devil in front of the world." Her hands trembled slightly as she sipped. "I didn't do it for revenge," she whispered. "I did it because I wanted my daughters to have a mother who didn't hide." Evelyn smiled faintly. "They will grow up knowing the truth, that their mother survived everything meant to destroy her." Thomas's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a message from his legal team. "Arrest confirmed. Both in custody. Charges formalized." He exhaled. "They're booking them now. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, attempted murder." Hannah closed her eyes. For the first time, she let herself breathe. But peace didn't come easily. "I keep thinking," she murmured, "about the way he looked at me before the surgery. Like I was already gone." Thomas leaned forward. "He'll have a long time to remember the woman he underestimated." Evelyn turned on the muted television. The live feed showed Lucas being shoved into the back of a police car. His face twisted toward the camera, full of rage and disbelief. Sabrina shouted something at the reporters, her voice lost in the noise. The ticker at the bottom of the screen read, "CEO Lucas Meyer and Sabrina Vale charged in insurance fraud and attempted homicide." The public reaction was instant. Some called it poetic justice, others called it karma. Meanwhile, in the back of the police car, Lucas finally snapped. "You said the documents were clean," he shouted at Sabrina. "They were. I didn't know about the cameras," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "You promised me, Lucas." "I promised you money," he hissed. "Now we both have nothing." The officer in the front seat glanced back through the partition. "You two can fight about it at Rikers," he said dryly. Back at the plaza, Hannah watched the broadcast without satisfaction. "They'll go to trial," she said quietly. "They'll lie again." Thomas nodded. "And we'll be ready again. The truth doesn't die twice." Evelyn placed a comforting hand on Hannah's shoulder. "Get some rest. You've already won the first battle." Outside, thunder rolled over Manhattan again, though the storm had passed hours ago. Hannah stood by the window, watching the police lights fade into the distance. For years she had lived in fear, of sickness, of abandonment, of silence. But not anymore. Her reflection looked back at her, alive, scarred, unbroken. "They tried to bury me," she whispered to the glass, "but they forgot I was still breathing." And for the first time in her life, Hannah Brooks felt what victory truly tasted like. Quiet, clean, and irreversible. Morning broke cold and sharp over Manhattan. News vans lined the street outside the NYPD precinct. Reporters huddled in the wind, waiting for a glimpse of the fallen couple. Inside, Lucas Meyer sat in a holding cell that smelled of metal and humiliation. His once perfect suit was wrinkled, his tie missing, his Rolex confiscated. The man who used to control boardrooms now had nothing to command but silence. Across from him, Sabrina Vale paced like a caged animal. Her mascara had smeared, her hair hung limp, and her voice cracked every time she spoke. "They can't keep us here, right? Lucas, say something." Lucas didn't look at her. "Shut up, Sabrina." She froze. "Excuse me?" He finally turned, eyes bloodshot, jaw tight. "You wanted luxury. You wanted to be Mrs. Meyer. Congratulations, you're now part of the headline." She sank onto the metal bench, tears streaking down her face. "I did it for you. I loved you." Lucas laughed bitterly. "You loved what I could buy you. The rest was convenient." In another part of the city, on the 47th floor of a Park Avenue building, Hannah Brooks was watching the same footage on television. Lucas being walked from his cell in handcuffs, Sabrina crying behind him. The news anchor's voice was calm, almost satisfied. "The once promising CEO of Meyer Financial faces multiple federal charges today. His mistress, socialite Sabrina Vale, is also under investigation. Both are expected to appear in court this afternoon." Hannah turned off the sound. The city outside her window looked endless, but for the first time, it didn't scare her. Her father, Thomas Grant, sat at the dining table, reviewing documents from his legal team. "You don't have to watch it," he said gently. "Let the lawyers handle the rest." Hannah shook her head. "No, I need to see it. Every second of it. I need to remember what greed costs. Thomas looked at her for a long moment. It cost him his soul, he said quietly. It gave you your freedom. In the courtroom later that day, Lucas faced the judge. The flash of cameras outside the glass doors was relentless. His attorney tried to argue temporary insanity, the pressure of work, financial stress, emotional trauma, but the evidence was impossible to bury. The forged documents, the recordings, the security footage, and the USB drive with his own voice sealing his fate. The prosecutor's closing statement was simple and brutal. This man chose profit over human life. He viewed his wife as an obstacle, his children as insurance, and his mistress as a tool. There's no insanity here, only greed. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, the courtroom gasped. Lucas's knees almost buckled. Sabrina sobbed openly, clutching her pearls as if they could save her. The officers moved forward to take them away. As Lucas passed by Hannah's seat in the gallery, he stopped. For a moment, their eyes met, husband and wife, predator and survivor. He whispered, "You ruined me." She answered softly, "No, Lucas, you ruined yourself." That night, news outlets across America replayed the footage. The disgraced CEO led away in handcuffs, his mistress screaming his name as he vanished into the flashing lights. On social media, hashtags trended. Justice for Hannah, the Meyer fall. At home, Hannah sat by the nursery, watching her 3 daughters sleep. Their tiny chests rose and fell in rhythm. Their small fingers curled around the edges of their blankets. She stroked their hair and whispered, "We're free now, my loves. Free." Thomas stood quietly in the doorway. "He thought he could buy life," he said, "but you can't buy peace." Hannah smiled faintly. "Peace isn't for sale. It's earned, one heartbeat at a time." Outside, the city lights flickered against the glass, 1,000 reflections of a future finally unchained. And somewhere deep in the night, the ghost of greed lay buried, exactly where it belonged. The trial was over, but the noise hadn't stopped. For weeks, the name Hannah Brooks dominated every headline. The wife who came back from the dead. Talk shows dissected her courage. Editorials called her story a wake-up call for women everywhere. Yet in her Park Avenue apartment, Hannah didn't feel like a hero. Fame felt cold. Cameras still waited outside the lobby. Strangers left flowers, letters, even baby gifts. But every night, when the lights went off, she still woke from dreams of the operating room. The beeping, the voices, the darkness swallowing her whole. Thomas Grant noticed. One evening, he entered her room carrying a small wooden box. His expression was different, not the composed mask of a billionaire, but something quieter, almost afraid. "I found this in the archives of my old house in Napa," he said, setting the box down gently. "Your mother sent it to me years ago. It was returned, unopened. I never knew why." Hannah blinked. "My mother?" He nodded. "She wrote it before she disappeared. I think it's time you read it." The box was lined with old velvet, faintly smelling of lavender and smoke. Inside was an envelope, yellowed at the edges, sealed with red wax. The handwriting was unmistakable, delicate, looping, the same way her mother used to sign birthday cards. Hannah's hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a letter, dated more than 30 years ago. She began to read aloud. "Thomas, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't find the courage to send it. I'm leaving New York tonight. I'm pregnant. I don't know what will happen, but I have to protect our child. Your family will never accept me. They said things I can't repeat. I'm scared. Not of poverty, but of power. Power ruins people, Thomas. If this baby ever finds you one day, tell her that her mother loved her enough to disappear." The words blurred as tears filled Hannah's eyes. She read the last line in a whisper. "And if she inherits your strength, she'll survive anything." She folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her heart. For a long time, no one spoke. Thomas sat beside her, his hands clasped. "I thought she died in that fire," he said softly. "I searched for years, but the system back then, it was cruel. They hid everything." Evelyn, who had joined them quietly, nodded. "I found records. Your mother came to the hospital where I worked. She begged me to protect the baby if something happened to her. That's why I recognized you, Hannah. You had her eyes." Hannah turned toward Evelyn, shock rippling through her. You were there that night?" Evelyn's voice trembled. "I pulled you from the wreckage. I thought you'd been claimed by another family, but when you reappeared at Mount Sinai, I knew." The room fell silent again. Thomas's eyes glistened. "She saved you," he said to his daughter, "and I lost 30 years believing you were gone." Hannah reached across the table and took both their hands. "Then maybe it wasn't lost," she said softly. "Maybe we were all just waiting for the right moment to find each other." Outside, snow had begun to fall over Manhattan. The city looked softer, quieter. Evelyn wiped her eyes. "You know," she said, smiling faintly, "your mother used to talk about naming you Hope." Hannah smiled through tears. "She got her wish. One of my daughters carries her name." Thomas looked at them both, two women connected by tragedy and love, and finally his shoulders relaxed. "Then her story doesn't end in ashes," he said. "It ends here with you." Hannah looked out the window, the city lights reflecting in her tears. For the first time, she didn't see chaos or fear, just the beginning of peace. And in her hands, the letter still pulsed like a heartbeat, a bridge between the past that broke her and the future she was finally ready to live. 1 year later, New York looked different. Maybe it wasn't the city that had changed. Maybe it was Hannah Brooks. The scars on her body had faded, but the ones on her soul had turned into something else: strength. The headlines now read, "Hannah Grant to host charity gala for single mothers and heart patients." The event would be held at the River Cafe, overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge, the same skyline that once watched her die, now shining for her rebirth. She adjusted her simple silk gown in the mirror. It wasn't designer, no diamonds, just a small silver necklace her mother had left behind, polished and worn close to her heart. Evelyn entered the room, radiant in a navy blue dress. "Are you ready?" Hannah smiled. For the first time, yes. Downstairs, Thomas Grant was greeting guests, senators, philanthropists, doctors from Mount Sinai, even journalists who had once chased scandal. But tonight wasn't about exposure. Tonight was about closure. When Hannah entered the ballroom, conversations softened. Cameras turned, but there was no chaos, only quiet admiration. She moved with grace, not arrogance. Her face, once plastered on tabloid covers, was now the symbol of hope. She took the stage as the orchestra faded. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear and steady. "A year ago, I stood in this city as a ghost, legally dead, spiritually broken. I had lost my home, my husband, and nearly my life. But what I gained was something no money could buy: truth." A hush fell over the audience. Even the waiters paused. "I stand here because people chose courage over comfort," she continued. "Because a doctor believed in justice. Because a stranger turned out to be my father. And because I refused to let betrayal be the end of my story." She paused, her gaze drifting toward the skyline beyond the glass windows. "Tonight, we raise funds for women who are fighting alone, women like me. For those who've been silenced, shamed, or forgotten, this foundation will help them rise again." Applause swelled through the room. Tears glimmered on faces she didn't even know. Thomas watched proudly from the front table. Evelyn dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. After her speech, guests approached one by one, investors offering donations, journalists asking for quotes, mothers whispering thank yous. But one visitor stood out. A tall man in a black suit, early 40s, kind eyes. He handed her a small envelope. "From someone who wanted you to have this," he said quietly. Hannah opened it. Inside was a letter. Neat handwriting, unfamiliar yet deliberate. "Hannah, I don't expect forgiveness. Prison gives you time to see yourself clearly. Too clearly. I was everything you said I was, greedy, blind, and cruel. I thought love was ownership. I see now it was grace, and I never deserved it. Take care of our daughters. Tell them their father finally learned what it means to lose everything and still be human." Lucas sang. Her fingers trembled slightly. She reread the letter twice, then folded it and placed it inside her clutch. Thomas noticed her expression. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she said softly. He finally said something true. Later that night, when the gala ended and the lights dimmed, Hannah stepped outside onto the terrace. The city spread out before her, the East River glimmering under the moonlight. Evelyn joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You did good, Hannah." Hannah smiled faintly. "We all did." She looked toward the horizon, where the sky met the city, and felt the wind brush through her hair. For the first time, she wasn't haunted by what happened, because her story wasn't one of death anymore. It was one of resurrection. And as the lights of New York danced below, Hannah Brooks Grant whispered to the night, "I lived. That's enough." It was late February when the first letter arrived. No return address, just a stamped envelope with Rikers Island Correctional Facility printed across the top. Hannah Brooks hesitated before opening it. The handwriting was familiar, sharp, disciplined, deliberate. She sat at her kitchen table while her daughters napped in the next room. Outside, the Manhattan skyline shimmered under a gray winter sun. Inside the envelope was a single page. Hannah, they tell me time heals everything. It doesn't. It only magnifies the silence. I replay that night in my head. Your face, the machines, the sound of my own voice saying things I can't take back. I don't expect redemption, but I can't die with this rot inside me. Lucas. She read it twice, then folded it neatly back into the envelope. There was no anger left in her, only exhaustion. Lucas Meyer had stolen her peace for years. She refused to let his words take more. Still, she didn't throw it away. She placed it in a small box in her closet, the same one that held her mother's old letter. Weeks later, another arrived. The guards say I'm quiet. They don't know silence is the loudest punishment. Sabrina stopped writing. She blames me for everything. She's right, but every night I see our daughters' faces. I don't deserve to know them, but please, tell them I'm sorry. This time, her hands trembled. She remembered the man she had once loved, the one who read poetry on Sunday mornings, who swore he'd protect her forever. She remembered the feel of his hand before the betrayal, before the greed, and she realized something that startled her. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant letting go of the need for vengeance. That night, she wrote back. Lucas, you destroyed everything we had, but I don't hate you anymore. Hate kept me alive when I was broken, but it can't raise our daughters. I'll tell them the truth, not to shame you, but to teach them what love isn't. You wanted power. I found peace. That's the difference between us. Hannah 4. She sealed the letter, mailed it, and felt an invisible weight lift from her chest. Days turned into months. Lucas replied only once more. Your forgiveness is crueler than your anger. It reminds me of everything I could have been. Take care of them, Hannah. Don't let them become like me. And that was the last she ever heard from him. Spring came. The city bloomed again. Pink cherry blossoms lining Central Park. Hannah took the girls there every weekend. Grace chasing pigeons, Lily collecting fallen petals, Hope giggling in her stroller. Thomas Grant joined them sometimes, sitting on the bench, pretending to read the newspaper while secretly watching his granddaughters play. Evelyn often brought coffee and laughed when the twins tried to fix her doctor hair. Life had found rhythm again, quiet, imperfect, real. One afternoon, as Hannah watched her daughters twirl beneath the cherry trees, she whispered, "You'll never know the darkness I came from, only the light that came after." That evening, she opened her closet and took out the box, the letters from her mother and the ones from Lucas. She tied them together with a silk ribbon and placed them in a drawer labeled Past. Some ghosts deserved a grave, not a spotlight. Before turning off the light, she glanced out the window. The city glowed against the night sky, reflections of bridges and skyscrapers merging into one heartbeat. For the first time, she didn't see reminders of pain, only proof that survival could be beautiful. And in that quiet, Hannah Brooks finally understood. Forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was the final act of freedom. Summer in New York had a way of smelling like rebirth. Heat rising from the pavement, the Hudson glimmering like glass, laughter echoing through Central Park. To everyone else, Hannah Brooks Grant was a success story. The woman who survived death, rebuilt her life, and turned pain into power. But late at night, when the city quieted, she still woke with the same dream. The cold operating table, the beeping machine, the sound of Lucas's voice saying, "Save the babies." Even peace has shadows. She tried to fill the silence with life. Her daughter's laughter, her work at the foundation, dinners with Evelyn and Thomas. But some nights, when the city lights flickered against her apartment windows, Hannah still felt haunted. One evening, she found herself walking alone along Fifth Avenue, her reflection moving beside her in the designer windows. The streets shimmered with the glow of Cartier and Dior, symbols of the world she had once been excluded from and now walked through freely. Yet none of it mattered. She wasn't chasing luxury, she was chasing meaning. She stopped at a cafe near Bryant Park, ordering a latte, sitting by the window. A group of young women nearby whispered excitedly, their phones open on a news article. "Isn't that her?" one said softly. "The woman from the trial?" She looks peaceful. Hannah smiled faintly. They weren't mocking her. They were admiring her. That used to make her uncomfortable, but tonight it felt different. Maybe she could be living proof that surviving didn't require perfection, just persistence. Her phone buzzed. A message from Thomas. Dinner at the townhouse tonight. Evelyn made too much lasagna again, she replied. On my way soon. But as she stepped outside, a voice behind her froze her in place. Hannah? She turned. It wasn't Lucas. It was Sabrina Vale. The woman looked nothing like the one from the tabloids. No designer dress, no diamonds, no arrogance. Her hair was shorter, her makeup faint. She wore a plain gray coat despite the warmth. Sabrina? Hannah's tone was calm but distant. You're out. 6 months early, Sabrina said, voice trembling. Good behavior, therapy, a lot of lawyers. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Sabrina swallowed. I came to say I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything. I just needed to tell you that I thought I loved him. I didn't realize I was destroying someone else's life. Hannah studied her carefully. There was no pity in her eyes, only quiet clarity. You destroyed your own too. Sabrina nodded, tears welling. I know, I live with it every day. The cameras, the whispers, they're gone now. But the guilt isn't. I just wanted you to hear it from me. Hannah exhaled slowly. You've said it. Now go make it mean something. Sabrina hesitated, then whispered. He asks about you sometimes. Hannah's jaw tightened. Then tell him I don't exist in his world anymore. They stood there for a moment, two women linked by tragedy, but separated by choice. Then Sabrina turned and disappeared into the crowd, swallowed by the city that had once worshipped her. That night, Hannah sat at her father's dining table, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and the smell of lasagna. Her daughters giggled as Thomas pretended to steal their breadsticks. Evelyn poured wine, her smile soft. For the first time, Hannah realized something simple and powerful. Peace didn't mean forgetting the storm. It meant learning to dance in the quiet after it. Later, she tucked her daughters into bed and whispered, You were born in chaos, my loves, but you'll grow up in peace. Outside, New York shimmered, alive, imperfect, unstoppable, just like her. Autumn returned to Manhattan, crisp and golden. The leaves fell across Central Park like soft fire, and for the first time in years, Hannah Brooks Grant felt settled. Her daughters were in preschool, her foundation was thriving, and the nightmares had begun to fade. But peace, she had learned, was fragile. It took only one phone call to shake it apart. It came on a quiet Tuesday morning. She was reviewing proposals for a new women's shelter when her assistant knocked gently. Mrs. Grant, there's a Detective Miller on line 2. He says it's important. Hannah's heart dropped. That name, that tone. She picked up the phone. This is Hannah. Mrs. Grant, the detective said, his voice low. We thought you should hear this before it hits the news. Lucas Meyer escaped during a prison transfer early this morning. Her blood ran cold. What do you mean escaped? There was a transport accident on the Queensboro Bridge. One guard dead, another injured. He's gone. Hannah gripped the edge of her desk. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe. Do you think he'll come for me? We don't know, the detective replied. But we're assigning protection until he's found. He's not the same man he was, Mrs. Grant. We think he's desperate. After the call, she sat in silence. The city outside her window glittered as usual, indifferent. It was as if the skyline itself had turned its back again. By the time Thomas and Evelyn arrived at her apartment, the story had already broken across every major network. Disgraced CEO Lucas Meyer escapes prison transfer. Manhunt underway. Thomas's security detail moved through the apartment like clockwork. New locks, cameras, a guard at the door. Evelyn tried to keep her voice steady as she said, He won't get far. They'll find him. But Hannah saw something in her father's eyes, a flicker of fear he didn't want her to notice. That night, she tucked her daughters into bed, pretending everything was normal. Grace clung to her wrist. Mommy, why are there policemen outside? Just helpers, Hannah said softly, forcing a smile. They're keeping us safe. But after they fell asleep, she sat in the dark, staring at the city lights. Her reflection in the window looked calm, but inside, panic brewed like thunder. At midnight, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A low, broken voice came through the line. You thought you buried me, Hannah. Her heart stopped. Lucas, he laughed, a bitter, ragged sound. They took everything from me, my company, my freedom, my name. But you took my life. Where are you? She demanded. Closer than you think. The line went dead. Within minutes, Thomas's team swept the building, but Lucas was nowhere. The police traced the call. It had come from a burner phone near the Hudson River docks. The next day was chaos. Reporters surrounded the Foundation's office. Headlines screamed, "Murderer on the run. Ex-wife targeted." The mayor announced an official manhunt. Hannah gave a brief statement to the press, her voice calm, though her hands shook. "I survived him once," she said, "and if he's out there, he should remember. I'm not the same woman he tried to bury." That night, she slept in a secured penthouse under armed watch, her daughters staying with Evelyn. But even surrounded by guards and walls, she couldn't shake the feeling that Lucas was out there, watching, waiting. Somewhere, maybe in a shadowed alley or across the river, a man who had lost everything was plotting the only thing he had left: revenge. And as the wind howled through the city that made her and nearly broke her, Hannah Brooks Grant realized peace was never permanent, only borrowed, until the storm returned. Rain fell hard over Manhattan, slicing through the streetlights and turning Fifth Avenue into rivers of gold and shadow. It had been 4 days since Lucas Meyer escaped, and fear had begun to seep back into Hannah's world like poison. Every window in the Grant penthouse was locked. Security cameras blinked red. Thomas's men guarded every hallway, but even they couldn't calm the unease that pulsed through the air. Hannah stood by the window, staring down at the slick streets below. Somewhere out there, her ex-husband was walking free again, breathing, thinking, hunting. Her phone buzzed. Evelyn's message flashed. "He won't get far. Trust me." But Hannah couldn't shake the chill. Lucas had always been clever, not the kind of man to act without purpose. If he had escaped, he had a plan. Across the city, in a derelict apartment near the docks, Lucas stared into a cracked mirror. His once perfect hair was matted, his sharp features drawn and hollow. He looked nothing like the man who once commanded boardrooms. But his eyes, those calculating, burning eyes, still gleamed with the same cold ambition. A newspaper lay open on the table. Hannah's face stared back at him from the front page. The headline read, "Hannah Grant, the woman who beat death." He traced her name with a trembling finger. "You took my empire," he whispered. "Now I'll take yours." He opened a duffel bag. Inside, a gun, a prepaid phone, and a stolen access badge bearing the logo of the Hannah Grant Foundation. Rain hit the windows harder, lightning flickered. He smiled. "Let's see how strong you really are, Hannah." That night, Hannah's father insisted she rest. "You've barely slept," Thomas said. "I can't," she admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him. I hear that voice." Thomas reached for her hand. "You're safe here. I have the best people watching over you." But Hannah looked out the window again. The city lights reflected in her eyes. "He's smarter than you think. He won't attack head-on. He'll go where I'm weakest." "Where is that?" Her answer came like a whisper. "My foundation." At that exact moment, miles away, a security guard at the Foundation's Midtown office opened the side door to a man in a hooded coat. "Badge?" the guard asked. The man flashed the forged ID. "Maintenance." The guard nodded, letting him pass. Minutes later, Lucas stood in the dim hallway, the scent of disinfectant and printer ink heavy in the air. The walls were lined with framed photos. Hannah with donors, Hannah holding her children, Hannah smiling. His jaw clenched. He moved through the building like a shadow, silent and sure. In her office, he found what he was looking for. A framed picture of Hannah with her daughters, Grace, Lily, and Hope. Their names were written in her handwriting. He stared at the photo for a long moment, his reflection warping in the glass. "You built your happiness on my grave," he muttered. "Let's see how long it lasts." Then he slipped a small flash drive into her computer. The screen flickered to life. A virus, something he had created long before his fall, began uploading financial data, donor lists, private emails. Back at the penthouse, Hannah's phone vibrated with an alert. "Unauthorized access detected. Foundation server." Her heart lurched. "He's in," she whispered. Thomas called his head of security. "Track it." "We already are," the agent replied. "Signals bouncing between Midtown and the docks." Evelyn stepped into the room, her face pale. "If he's accessing her system, he's close." Hannah's voice was steady now, almost calm. "Then so am I." Thomas grabbed her arm. "No, you're not going anywhere." But she pulled free. "He wants me afraid, hiding, I'm done being hunted." Outside, thunder cracked across the sky. As she grabbed her coat and stepped into the elevator, her reflection stared back. No longer a victim, but a woman preparing to face the ghost that once owned her life. "If he's coming for me," Hannah whispered, "then I'll be waiting." The city was drenched in thunder and fear. A violent storm rolled over Manhattan, lightning flashing against glass towers as if the heavens themselves were watching. Hannah Brooks Grant stood in the rain, her coat clinging to her skin, her breath visible in the cold air. The address Detective Miller had traced, the Hannah Grant Foundation, Midtown, loomed ahead like a wounded heart. The building was dark, except for one light flickering on the top floor, her office. She pushed through the lobby doors, her footsteps echoing. The guards were gone. Only the hum of the emergency lights filled the silence. She took the elevator to the 5th floor, gripping the small silver necklace at her throat. Her mother's charm, her talisman. When the doors opened, she saw him. Lucas Meyer stood in the middle of her office, rain dripping from his hair, his clothes torn and filthy. His once golden eyes were now hollow, feverish. The gun in his hand gleamed beneath the flickering light. "Hello, Hannah," he said softly. "You always did like grand entrances." Hannah didn't move. "It's over, Lucas. The police are on their way." He laughed, broken and wild. "You think I care about the police? I've been in cages. You know what they do to men like me? You made me a monster." "No," she said, voice steady. "You made yourself one." He took a step closer, the gun trembling slightly. "I loved you. I built everything for you, the house, the company, the life you wanted, and you repaid me with betrayal." "You tried to kill me," she said quietly. "You called my death business." Lightning flashed behind the window, throwing their faces into stark relief, his twisted with rage, hers calm, resolute. Lucas's voice broke. "I lost everything, my money, my name, my freedom, and you got to walk away with my children, my legacy, my father-in-law's fortune. Tell me, Hannah, how's that fair?" She met his eyes. "It's not about fairness, it's about consequences." For a moment, the storm filled the silence between them. Then he lifted the gun. "I'm taking it back, all of it." The office door burst open. Detective Miller, Thomas Grant, and Dr. Evelyn Grant flooded in, weapons drawn. "Drop it, Lucas," Miller shouted. "It's over." Lucas spun toward them, shouting, "You think I'm afraid to die? She already killed me." Thomas stepped forward, voice cold and controlled. "You took my daughter once. You won't touch her again." Lucas's hand shook violently. "You don't understand, Thomas. She destroyed me." But his words were cut short as Evelyn, moving fast, grabbed a metal tray from the side table and hurled it. It struck his wrist, sending the gun flying. Lucas lunged toward Hannah, but she didn't retreat this time. She stepped forward and slapped him, hard, across the face. He froze, stunned, eyes wide. "That," she said, voice trembling, "is for every time you made me feel powerless." Before he could recover, Miller tackled him to the ground. Handcuffs clicked. The gun skittered across the floor. Lucas screamed, thrashing, his voice echoing through the hall. "You can't bury me again, Hannah. I'll always be part of you." She stared down at him, rain and tears mixing on her face. "You already are," she whispered, "but I'm done carrying you." The officers dragged him away. The storm outside finally began to break, the thunder fading into a low, distant hum. Hannah turned to her father, shaking. Thomas caught her in his arms, holding her tight. "It's over," he said softly. Evelyn touched Hannah's shoulder. "He can't hurt you anymore." Outside, dawn began to bleed through the clouds. The first light of morning spilled through the shattered glass window, touching Hannah's face. She looked out at the skyline, her city, her home, her proof that even after ruin, life could rise again. "Let him rot," she whispered. "The rest of us still have living to do." And as the sun climbed above Manhattan, Hannah Brooks Grant finally stepped out of the storm and into her freedom. So, that's how the story ends, my dear friends. You're still here, aren't you? If you've made it this far, something in Hannah's journey must have touched your heart. Maybe a quiet reminder that no matter how broken life gets, healing is still possible. Like the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Hannah's story isn't just about surviving betrayal or escaping the past. It's about reclaiming peace, choosing forgiveness over revenge, and finding light even when the storm feels endless. We all face moments when the world feels unfair, when people we trust hurt us. But as Seneca wrote, difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. Pain can be our teacher if we let it. So tonight, take a breath. Look at where you've been and where you are now. You're still standing, and that means you're already winning. If this story moved you, please hit like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel. Let's keep growing, healing, and learning together.
Unaware she owned the very bank where he hid the money, Isabella smiled through tears as her husband, Ethan, the man she built her empire beside, secretly emptied their $100 million joint account and walked out to marry his mistress. To the world, he looked untouchable, a genius who outsmarted his wife and secured his future. But what Ethan never knew was that every dollar he hid, every account he opened, every secret transfer he made, flowed through a bank that belonged to her. Now, as his new wife flaunts stolen wealth and Isabella's silence grows colder by the day, one question burns through the shadows. When the woman you betrayed owns the bank holding your sins, how far will her revenge go? And what exactly will she do that leaves them crushed forever? The first sting of betrayal didn't come with bank statements or lawyers' letters. It came in the form of red wine cascading down a silver gown in front of 300 guests. Isabella stood frozen under the chandelier's fractured light, her breath catching as laughter rippled through the ballroom like a cruel wave. Olivia Grant, the woman who had once been her husband's secretary, tilted her glass with the arrogance of someone who thought herself untouchable. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Olivia drawled, her smile sharp as crystal. "I didn't see you there." "Mrs. Oh, wait, is it still Mrs. Hale?" The crowd tittered. Cameras flashed. The red stain bloomed across Isabella's silk like blood. Jonathan Hale, her husband, didn't move to help her. Instead, he adjusted his cufflinks, lips curving with practiced composure. The smug kind that only billionaires who believe in their own invincibility could wear. His voice cut through the noise, calm, dismissive. "You should watch where you stand, Emily." He used her first name softly, almost like a scolding. But beneath it was venom, a public diminishment, a signal to everyone in the room that she no longer mattered. The humiliation was complete. People watched, whispered. Some pitied her, most didn't. She had once stood beside Jonathan as his equal, an heiress to Carter Engineering, brilliant and steady, the woman who'd helped him rise from a struggling entrepreneur to the CEO of Hale Global. Now she was reduced to spectacle, a symbol of discarded grace. Isabella, Emily Carter, Hale to the world, lowered her gaze, gripping her champagne flute with trembling fingers. She felt her father's voice echo from years ago, the night before her wedding. "Never let them see you break, Emily. Dignity is power they can't steal." So she smiled, just faintly, then turned, leaving the ballroom without a word. The restroom was cold, silent except for the faint drip of water from a leaky tap. She faced the mirror, her reflection fractured by light and tears. Her once perfect curls clung to her cheeks, her gown destroyed. But it wasn't the fabric that hurt. It was the look in Jonathan's eyes when he'd done nothing to stop it. For a long time she stared at herself, seeing not the humiliated woman the world had mocked, but the faint outline of someone buried beneath pain. Her father's voice again, softer this time, like wind through old oak doors. "When they take your pride, build something they can't touch." She inhaled sharply, wiped her tears, and for the first time that night, her hands stopped shaking. Outside the restroom, the sound of laughter returned. Jonathan's, Olivia's, the world's. The sound of power and betrayal intertwining. She stepped back into that sound with a face reborn in calmness, a mask that would later become her weapon. That night after the gala, the internet devoured her humiliation. "Billionaire's wife drenched in red," one headline read. "Olivia Grant claims the spotlight as Jonathan Hale's new queen." By morning, Emily woke to her name trending for all the wrong reasons. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Sympathy messages, gossip, and articles dissecting her fall from grace. The world had chosen sides. In the dining room of their penthouse, Jonathan sipped espresso and read the paper, perfectly at ease. Olivia, now dressed in one of Emily's old silk robes, perched on the counter like a queen already crowned. Jonathan looked up as Emily entered, his tone deliberately casual. "You've had quite the night. The world finally knows where things stand." Emily said nothing. He folded the paper, revealing his next strike. "After the merger closes next week, we'll file for divorce. You'll have your settlement, and I'll have peace." Her fingers tightened around her teacup. "And the joint account?" Jonathan's lips twitched. "Already taken care of. Consider it efficiency." Olivia laughed softly. "Don't take it personally, darling. You were just holding his fortune for a while." The cup in Emily's hand almost shattered, but instead of breaking, she smiled faintly. "Then I suppose I'll hold my peace." When they left for his morning meeting, she walked into his study, her heart a steady, quiet drum. She didn't know what she was searching for, but she found it. A folder marked Acquisition, Final Signatures. Inside were pages filled with her name, her signature, perfectly forged, authorizing every merger, every transfer, every false move in Hale Global's expansion. It wasn't humiliation anymore. It was war. She sat at his desk, the skyline glinting behind her. The woman in the mirror from last night, the one who faced herself after the wine and the mockery, was gone. In her place sat a strategist. Her father's final words echoed again, the night before he died. "They'll underestimate you, Emily. Let them. Power doesn't roar. It waits." And as the morning sun climbed over the city, Emily Carter Hale, humiliated wife, silent heiress, began to wait. But not for long. The city felt colder than usual when Emily stepped out of the Hale penthouse the next morning. A faint drizzle blurred the glass towers into streaks of silver and ash. Her driver, Marcus, opened the car door, eyes downcast, like everyone else these days. The world had seen the red wine, the laughter, the shame, but they hadn't seen what came after. She sat in silence as the car glided through downtown. Every billboard, every headline seemed to echo her fall. Betrayed wife, public meltdown, mistress turned queen. She almost smiled. Let them talk. The louder the noise, the quieter she could move beneath it. The car stopped in front of a tall marble building, Whitaker and Lowe Attorneys. The nameplate gleamed like armor. Her father had used this firm for decades to protect Carter Engineering's legacy, and she remembered sitting in its waiting room as a girl, her feet barely touching the floor, listening to men talk about contracts and ethics. Back then, it all seemed distant. Now, it was survival. Mr. Whitaker was older now, gray hair, deliberate voice, and eyes that missed nothing. When she entered his office, he rose immediately. "Mrs. Hale," he greeted softly, though his tone carried respect. "It's been a long time since you visited without your husband." She smiled faintly. "That's because he's the reason I'm here." He gestured for her to sit, studying her face. "What's happened?" She opened the folder, spreading the forged documents across his desk. "These bear my signature. They authorize multiple acquisitions under Hale Global, but I never signed them." Whitaker adjusted his glasses, scanning the pages carefully. His expression darkened. "These are not just mergers, Emily. These are liability shields. He's moved entire subsidiaries offshore, Malta, Singapore, the Caymans, and every one of them is under your legal authority." Her heart thudded. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Whitaker said, voice measured, "if this unravels, and it will, the law will treat you as the architect of every fraudulent deal. You'll take the fall, not him." The words hit her like ice. For a moment she could hear Jonathan's laugh from the penthouse, the way he'd looked at her over breakfast, calm, confident, knowing she wouldn't dare fight him. Whitaker watched her quietly. "He's clever. Ruthless, but clever. I assume he doesn't know you found these?" She shook her head. "Good. Then listen to me carefully." He leaned forward. "If you want to survive this, we have to build proof. Emails, timestamps, witness accounts, internal communications. You'll need leverage, and I believe you already have one advantage." She raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" Whitaker smiled faintly. "Your maiden holdings. Carter Trust still owns 22% of Hale Global's original capital structure. He's diluted everything else, but that's something he couldn't touch without your written consent." The realization struck her slowly, like light cutting through fog. Carter Trust, her father's old account, quiet, dormant, forgotten amid Jonathan's empire. She had never closed it. Whitaker continued, if you reclaim that trust and prove these signatures were forged, you can not only dismantle his legal standing, but regain control of the entire corporation. Every document he used against you becomes evidence. Every theft, every lie, recorded. Emily sat still for a long time, staring at the papers. Her humiliation from the gala replayed in her mind, but now it looked different. It wasn't just public mockery, it was motive, the moment that stripped away fear. I'll need everything you can find on those offshore accounts, she said finally, her voice low, precise. And I want to know who handled the transfers. Every lawyer, every accountant. Whitaker nodded, already taking notes. You're certain about this, Emily? If we move forward, there's no turning back. Her lips curved into something between sorrow and steel. He ended our marriage in public. I'll end his empire in silence. When she left the office, the rain had stopped. The air felt different, like the city itself had paused to listen. She sat in the back seat of the car, pulling out her phone. One name flashed across the screen. Ethan Brooks, childhood friend, former Hale Global engineer. Fired 2 years ago under corporate restructuring. But she remembered the truth. Ethan had questioned Jonathan's ethics, and that had made him a threat. She texted, Ethan, it's Emily. I need your help. It's about Hale Global. Within minutes, he replied, I've been waiting for this. Her reflection in the car window didn't look broken anymore. It looked focused, cold, ready. As the city lights flickered past, she began to piece it together. The gala, the humiliation, the forged signatures, the stolen millions. All of it wasn't just betrayal, it was orchestration, and she was done playing her assigned role. Jonathan believed he'd written the ending, but she was rewriting the script. That night, as she sat alone by the window of the penthouse, the skyline glimmered with cruel beauty. Somewhere in the distance, Jonathan and Olivia were probably celebrating, believing they'd already won. But the woman they left in ashes was learning how to use the fire. The world still believed Emily Carter Hale had vanished into humiliation. Tabloids had moved on to newer scandals. Gossip pages now called Olivia Mrs. Hale, and society's elite whispered about Emily like she was a ghost. But ghosts see everything. Every morning she played her part, quiet, gracious, unthreatening. At breakfast, Jonathan discussed his merger plans with Olivia, while Emily poured their coffee like an obedient hostess. She nodded at his every arrogant word, eyes lowered, the picture of defeated elegance. But beneath the table, her phone vibrated once, a signal from Ethan Brooks. Another batch of internal data had been uploaded to her secure drive. She smiled faintly. More sugar, Jonathan? He didn't notice the irony when she said it. He never noticed anything anymore. By day, she lived among them. By night, she dismantled them piece by piece. Ethan met her in discreet places, quiet cafes at odd hours, the back corridors of old Carter engineering sites long abandoned. He brought files, logs, system exports, old memos flagged for deletion. He hid everything offshore, Ethan murmured one night, spreading papers across a table in the flickering light. Shell companies, false invoices, bribed auditors. But what he didn't realize, every transaction ran through Carter Capital Bank's system. Emily stilled. That bank, Ethan nodded, the same one your father founded, the one you inherited. The revelation unfurled like destiny. Unaware she owned the very bank where Jonathan hid the money, until now. It was poetic, cruel, and precise. She opened her laptop, fingers steady. Ethan, I want every trace of those accounts. I want proof that every dollar he stole, every forged transaction, came through my bank. He hesitated. Emily, if he finds out, he won't. Her voice was quiet but absolute. He thinks I'm broken. That's my shield. The days that followed blurred into controlled chaos. Ethan reconnected her with 2 former employees, Mara Lynn, an ex-analyst fired after questioning a merger discrepancy, and Dean Alvarez, a compliance officer who'd vanished after refusing a bribe. They met in shadows, their faces lit by computer screens and determination. Mara handed Emily a flash drive. Encrypted communication logs. It shows how Olivia handled wire instructions from Jonathan's private server. She used your forged authority for every transaction, Dean added. We also found something else. Offshore documentation of charitable transfers that link back to his mistress's accounts. She's laundering his theft through false foundations. Emily's expression didn't flicker. She simply closed the folder. Good, we'll need notarized evidence. Every signature, every timestamp, verified. Ethan watched her, admiration in his eyes tinged with concern. You're colder than I remember. She looked up from her papers. Fire learned how to wear ice. Meanwhile, at home, the tension grew. Jonathan's empire was preparing for its crown jewel, the $8.4 billion merger with Vance Industries. He bragged endlessly, parading Olivia through media events as his muse, the woman who inspired a new era of leadership. Every time a reporter mentioned Emily, he smirked. Some people just can't adapt to greatness. She smiled through it all, attending dinners beside them, playing her silent part. Cameras captured her as the ex-wife who couldn't move on, the tragic relic of Jonathan's rise. She let them believe it, but the mask began to crack from his side, not hers. Late one night, Olivia confronted her in the hallway, tipsy on champagne. You still living here because you can't afford to leave? She slurred, waving a diamond-clad hand. Jonathan said he's keeping you until the papers are final. Isn't that pathetic? Emily's reply was so soft Olivia almost didn't catch it. It's called patience. You should try it sometime. Olivia frowned, unsure if it was an insult. Emily's calm unnerved her. After that night, Olivia's laughter around the penthouse felt forced, her glances sharper. Jonathan noticed nothing. He was consumed by power, blinded by success. He often left early, returning late, whispering to investors on secure calls. But Emily knew every whisper. Ethan had tapped into the firm's private cloud storage, syncing it to her hidden drive. Every lie was now recorded under her control. Weeks passed. The alliance grew. Proof piled up like dominoes waiting to fall. One evening, while reviewing files in her study, Emily paused at an old photo on the shelf, her and her father in front of Carter Engineering's first building. He had been so proud then, his hand on her shoulder, his voice steady. If they destroy your name, rebuild your meaning. Her eyes softened for a moment, then she returned to the data. She printed a single sheet, the offshore account summary, signed under her forged name. She stared at it, tracing the fake signature with her finger. This, she whispered, is what ends him. Outside her window, the skyline glowed like molten gold. Somewhere beyond those towers, Jonathan was celebrating his imminent merger, the final piece of his empire. He didn't know his entire fortune now sat in the hands of the woman he'd betrayed, funneled through a bank she owned, tracked by a team he'd cast out. He thought he'd built a kingdom of glass. He never saw the cracks forming beneath his feet. Emily shut off the light, her reflection fading into the darkness. Tomorrow she would attend the signing ceremony, silent, gracious, smiling as always. But for the first time, she wouldn't be pretending. Tomorrow the mask would break, on her terms. The morning of the signing dawned unnaturally bright. The city skyline shimmered like glass blades as the Hale Global Tower stood wrapped in banners and cameras. The $8.4 billion merger with Vance Industries was billed as the deal of the century. Inside the marble lobby, reporters swarmed, lights flashed, and the air vibrated with wealth and arrogance. Emily entered through the side entrance, silent, regal, dressed in white. Her calmness drew eyes, not her shame. Some whispered, "Isn't that Jonathan's ex?" Others only stared. She had that kind of presence again, the stillness that made even chaos wait its turn. Jonathan spotted her from across the boardroom, surprise flickering briefly before his smirk returned. "You didn't have to come," he said smoothly, buttoning his suit. "This isn't your world anymore." She smiled faintly. "I'm still a shareholder. I like to see where my name ends up." He laughed, assuming victory. Olivia stood beside him, her hand on his arm, radiant with stolen triumph. Around them sat investors, executives, and attorneys. Cameras rolled. It was history in motion, Jonathan's masterpiece. The CEO of Vance Industries, Raymond Vance, adjusted his glasses. If everyone's ready, we'll proceed with signatures. Once Mrs. Hale's authorization is logged, the merger will finalize. The word authorization lingered like a quiet echo. Jonathan gestured to an assistant who presented the final documents. Emily's signature is already recorded, he announced confidently. Her prior approval covers this transaction. Emily's voice, calm but clear, broke through the polished silence. Actually, that's what I came to discuss. Heads turned. Cameras stilled. Jonathan's smirk faltered. She rose, her movements deliberate, and placed a single folder on the conference table. Those signatures you've been using, she continued softly, the ones you said were mine. They aren't. Jonathan's jaw tightened. Emily, this isn't the place. It's exactly the place. She opened the folder. Inside lay notarized proof, comparative forensic analyses, timestamp records, and a verified affidavit from Mr. Whitaker himself. You forged my signature on every merger and acquisition over the last 2 years. You used my authority to move funds through offshore accounts, funds that passed through Carter Capital Bank. Raymond Vance frowned. Carter Capital? Isn't that one of your subsidiaries? Emily turned her gaze toward him, her tone smooth as glass. It's my bank. I own it. Every account, every transfer Jonathan thought was hidden. It all went through systems under my legal jurisdiction. Gasps broke the air. Jonathan's face went pale. Emily, stop this madness, he snapped, rising. You're embarrassing yourself. She cut him off, voice steady and lethal. No, Jonathan, I was humiliated at your gala. I was mocked in your home. But this, she lifted the evidence gently. This is justice. Olivia stood frozen, her composure cracking as Raymond Vance flipped through the documents. Mr. Hale, he said gravely, these signatures are indisputably forged. The due diligence clauses are void. If this is true, your entire merger is invalid. Impossible, Jonathan shouted, but the panic in his tone betrayed him. Emily leaned forward, her calmness colder than fury. You built your empire on lies, Jonathan, and you did it using my name. So today I'm taking back what's mine. Security guards entered quietly as murmurs filled the room. Investors began whispering, phones buzzing with alerts as the scandal spread in real time. Olivia stumbled back, mascara streaking, muttering, Jonathan, tell them it's not true. But it was over. The moment the documents were verified, Vance Industries' legal counsel rose. Effective immediately, we're withdrawing from this merger. The cameras caught everything, the chaos, the disbelief, the image of Jonathan Hale standing amid his collapsing kingdom. Emily turned toward him one last time. You emptied our account to build this, she said softly. Now watch how fast it disappears. He lunged toward her, but security intercepted him. Reporters shouted, flashbulbs flared. Emily didn't flinch. As they escorted Jonathan out, she only whispered to herself, never let them see you break. The next morning, headlines exploded. Hale global merger collapses in scandal. Forgery, fraud, and the wife who owned the bank. Emily Carter Hale reclaims her empire. Within days, Jonathan's assets were frozen, Olivia vanished from the tabloids, and the Hale Global Board voted unanimously to reinstate Emily as interim CEO. Her calm statement to the press was brief. Integrity built this company once. It will again. But behind that calm stood fire, controlled, purposeful, righteous. 2 weeks later, she visited her father's old office at Carter Engineering. The room smelled of dust and memory. The same blueprints hung on the wall, the community housing project he never finished before his death. She ran her hand along the drafting table where he once worked, hearing his voice again. When they take your pride, rebuild your meaning. Through the window, the skyline shimmered, not as Jonathan's world, but hers. She signed a new document on the table, transferring part of her recovered fortune into rebuilding that housing project. Not revenge now, redemption. When she stepped outside, the morning light fell over her like forgiveness. The world that once mocked her now waited for her next move. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Power didn't roar. It waited, and today it belonged entirely to her.